There is a reason certain people stay in your mind long after they have left your life. There is a reason some words hurt far more than they should. A reason one person's criticism can follow you for years. While another's opinion disappears before the day is over, most people believe those reactions are caused by the outside world, by difficult people, by bad luck, by betrayal, by disrespect. Carl Jung believed something far more unsettling. He believed the world is constantly revealing pieces of yourself that you have not yet learned to recognize. Think about the last person who truly upset you, not someone who simply annoyed you, someone who awakened something powerful inside you. Anger, jealousy, fear, admiration, resentment. Now ask yourself a different question. Why them? Out of the billions of people on Earth, why did that particular person affect you so deeply? Perhaps it wasn't because of who they are. Perhaps it was because of what they reflected. Imagine standing before a perfectly still lake. At first, you believe you are looking at the water, then you realize you have been looking at yourself all along. Carl Jung believed life works in much the same way. The people you meet, the conflicts you repeat, the relationships you cannot forget are often mirrors before they are mysteries. Not because the world revolves around you, but because your unconscious is constantly using the world to reveal what consciousness has not yet accepted. Every emotional reaction becomes a clue. Every recurring pattern, an invitation, every unexpected conflict, a conversation between your outer life and your inner world. Most people spend their lives trying to change the reflection. Very few stop to examine what is standing before the mirror, and perhaps that is why the same lessons return again and again until they are finally seen. Tonight, we are going to explore one of Carl Jung's deepest and most transformative ideas, not how to change the world around you, but how to understand why the world keeps showing you the parts of yourself you still refuse to see. The world is never as objective as you believe. Imagine waking up tomorrow, stepping outside, looking at the same streets, the same people, the same sky, yet somehow everything feels different. Not because the world changed overnight, because you did. Most people spend their entire lives believing reality exists independently of the observer. Carl Jung challenged that assumption. He believed that what you experience as reality is never merely the external world, it is the meeting point between the world and your unconscious. Think about two strangers walking through the same city. One notices kindness everywhere, a stranger smiles, someone opens a door, a child laughs in the distance, the city feels alive. The second person walks the very same streets, yet notices only impatience, cold faces, noise, danger, isolation. Neither person is lying, neither is imagining things. Both are observing something real, but neither is observing the whole picture. Each is seeing the world through the invisible architecture of the psyche. Imagine placing a drop of blue ink into a clear glass of water. Slowly, the entire glass changes color. The water itself has not become blue. The ink has quietly influenced everything you now see. The unconscious works the same way. Every unresolved fear, every forgotten wound, every hidden belief colors perception long before consciousness realizes it. This is why Jung insisted that projection is not a rare psychological event. It is one of the primary ways human beings experience reality. Without realizing it, we constantly place pieces of ourselves onto the world around us. Then we react not only to reality, but to our own unconscious reflected back at us. Imagine entering a room filled with mirrors. Every direction you turn, another reflection appears. Soon, you stop noticing the mirrors. You simply assume there are countless versions of the world surrounding you. But what if every reflection has always been pointing back toward the same person? This is the uncomfortable truth Jung spent decades exploring. The people who fascinate you, the people who disturb you, the people you envy, the people you cannot forgive, often reveal far more about your unconscious than about theirs. Not because those people are imaginary, but because your emotional reaction belongs to you. Two people may encounter the exact same individual. One feels immediate admiration, another feels instant irritation. intention. The person has not changed, only the unconscious interpreting them. Jung believed this difference is one of the greatest opportunities for self-discovery. Because emotion is rarely random, strong emotional reactions often signal that something deeper has been activated, something unfinished, something forgotten, something waiting to become conscious. Imagine hearing a single musical note. For most people, it passes unnoticed, but somewhere in the audience, one individual suddenly begins to cry, not because of the note itself, because the sound awakened a memory hidden deep within the psyche. Life functions in remarkably similar ways. Events do not merely happen to us, they resonate with us. Some resonate quietly, others strike hidden places we did not know still existed. That resonance is where individuation begins, not in changing the world, but in asking why the world affects you the way it does. Perhaps the greatest illusion is believing that your strongest emotions are caused entirely by what happens outside you. Perhaps they are invitations, leading you towards something that has been waiting inside all along, and the moment you begin asking, "What is this experience reflecting within me?" the mirror stops being an enemy, it becomes a guide. The people who disturb you are rarely the real problem. There is a question almost no one asks, not because it is difficult, because the answer has the power to change the way you see everyone around you. Why does one person's behavior barely affect you, while another person's words remain in your mind for years? Why can two people commit the exact same mistake, yet only one of them awakens something powerful inside you? Most people assume the answer is obvious. They're simply a difficult person. They're toxic, they're selfish, they're arrogant. Sometimes that is true, but Carl Jung believed there is often something much deeper happening. Imagine walking through a museum filled with hundreds of paintings. Most of them receive only a passing glance. Then, without warning, you stop. One painting captures your attention completely. You cannot explain why. It feels strangely personal, almost as if the painting were looking back at you. The unconscious behaves in remarkably similar ways. Thousands of people cross your path every year. Most leave almost no emotional trace, but a few stay with you, not because they are objectively more important, because they have touched something that already existed inside your own psyche. Jung called this projection. One of the most misunderstood ideas in psychology. Projection does not mean the other person has no flaws. It means your emotional intensity reveals that more than one story is unfolding. There is the external event, and there is the invisible response rising from your unconscious. Imagine carrying a hidden wound beneath your clothing. Most days, you barely notice it. Then someone accidentally brushes against it. The pain feels immediate, powerful, unexpected. Would you blame the person for creating the wound? Of course not. They merely revealed what was already there. Psychological wounds behave the same way. Certain people do not create your deepest reactions. They uncover them. This is why Jung encouraged his patients to become curious whenever someone provoked an unusually strong emotional response. Not because the other person was innocent, but because the reaction itself contained valuable information. The ego immediately asks, "How do I change them?" The unconscious quietly asks, "What has this awakened inside me?" That question changes everything, because the moment attention turns inward, the conflict becomes an opportunity. Think about jealousy. Most people experience it as proof that someone else possesses something they lack. Jung looked beyond the surface. Sometimes jealousy reveals an unlived potential, a forgotten ambition, a talent abandoned years ago. You do not merely envy another person's success. Part of you grieves the version of yourself that never had the courage to pursue its own path. Now think about arrogance. Why does arrogance infuriate some people while barely affecting others? Perhaps because arrogance reminds them of people who once humiliated them, or perhaps because somewhere deep inside, they have spent years suppressing their own confidence. The shadow has a remarkable habit. Whatever we refuse to recognize within ourselves, we begin seeing everywhere outside ourselves. The more completely we reject a part of our own nature, the more emotionally charged it becomes when reflected by someone else. This explains one of the great mysteries of human relationships. Why we seem to encounter the same personalities again and again, different names, different faces, different cities, yet somehow the emotional experience feels hauntingly familiar. Many people call this bad luck. Jung called it unfinished psychological work. The unconscious repeats what consciousness refuses to understand. Not to punish you, to complete something. Imagine reading the same chapter of a book over and over. At first, you assume the book is defective, then you realize you never turn the page. Life often works exactly like that. The lesson is not repeated because the world enjoys your suffering. The lesson repeats because the psyche is still waiting for integration. Perhaps this is why the people who frustrate you the most can become your greatest teachers, not because they deserve your admiration, not because their behavior is acceptable, but because every intense reaction offers an opportunity to discover something that has remained hidden for years. The mirror does not always show a pleasant image. Sometimes it reveals the very part of ourselves we have spent a lifetime trying not to see, and perhaps that is precisely why it is so valuable. Because healing rarely begins with changing the reflection. It begins the moment you become willing to look into the mirror without turning away. The life you keep repeating is trying to tell you something. There is a pattern hidden inside almost every human life. At first, that it looks like coincidence. A relationship ends. Years later, another relationship ends in almost the same way. A friendship begins with excitement, then slowly becomes disappointment. A new job promises a fresh beginning, only to awaken the same frustration you felt before. Different places, different people, different years, yet somehow the emotional ending feels strangely familiar. Most people call this bad luck, others blame destiny. Carl Jung saw something entirely different. He believed the psyche repeats what consciousness refuses to understand. Imagine listening to a song that suddenly stops before the final note. The melody remains unfinished. Your mind naturally wants completion. It quietly waits for the ending. The unconscious behaves in much the same way. Every unresolved emotional experience continues seeking completion, not through memory, through repetition. This explains why life sometimes feels as though it keeps presenting the same lesson wearing different faces. Imagine an actor performing the same play in different theaters. The stage changes, the audience changes, even the costumes change. But the script remains exactly the same. Many people spend decades believing they are living new stories. Jung believed they are often repeating the same one, not because life lacks imagination, because the unconscious is astonishingly persistent. It keeps presenting the same emotional material until consciousness becomes capable of seeing it differently. Think back over your own life. Have you ever met someone who immediately felt familiar, not because you had seen them before, but because the emotional dynamic seemed strangely recognizable? Perhaps you found yourself once again trying to earn affection, trying to prove your worth, trying to rescue someone, trying to avoid abandonment, trying to become indispensable. The faces changed. The emotional role remained exactly the same. This is one of the great mysteries Jung tried to explain. We do not merely choose relationships, our unconscious often chooses opportunities to replay unfinished psychological stories, not to trap us, to heal us. Imagine carrying a compass that has been damaged for years. No matter where you travel, it keeps pointing in the wrong direction. After enough time, you stop questioning the compass, you begin questioning the world, you conclude every destination is disappointing, every road is confusing, every journey leads nowhere. Yet the roads were never the problem. The instrument guiding you was. The unconscious functions like that hidden compass. If childhood taught you that love must be earned, you may unconsciously seek relationships where love always feels just out of reach. If you learned that your value depends upon achievement, success may never feel satisfying. Every accomplishment simply creates another mountain to climb, not because the world demands it, because your unconscious still believes worth must constantly be proven. Notice something remarkable. Reality begins organizing itself around the identity you have never questioned. This does not mean life magically creates every circumstance. It means your perception, your decisions, your expectations, and your emotional reactions quietly cooperate with that identity. Without realizing it, you begin walking toward what already feels psychologically familiar, even when familiarity hurts. This is why so many people remain inside painful patterns long after they recognize them intellectually. Knowledge alone rarely changes the unconscious. The ego understands. The deeper layers of the psyche continue following yesterday's emotional map. Jung often compared psychological growth to waking from a dream. While dreaming, everything feels completely real. Only after awakening do you recognize the illusion. Individuation follows the same principle. One day, you suddenly notice something that has been happening for years. You realize you always become attracted to emotionally unavailable people. You realize criticism affects you far more than praise. You realize you apologize even when you have done nothing wrong. You realize silence makes you anxious because somewhere inside, silence once meant rejection. Nothing external changed, only awareness. And awareness is where freedom quietly begins. Imagine walking through an enormous labyrinth. For years, you believed every wall was permanent. Then one afternoon, you discover a staircase. You climb. From above, the labyrinth suddenly makes sense. The walls that once trapped you now reveal a clear pattern. The exits were always there. You simply could not see them from inside. Consciousness creates exactly that kind of elevation. The goal is not to escape life. The goal is to observe it from a place where repetition finally becomes visible. Because once you recognize the pattern begins losing its power. Not immediately, not dramatically, but quietly. Like ice melting beneath the first warmth of spring. This is why Jung believed awareness itself possesses transformative power, not because awareness instantly solves every problem, because unconscious repetition cannot survive indefinitely under conscious observation. The psyche no longer needs to whisper through repeated suffering once consciousness has finally begun listening, and perhaps that is why the same lesson has appeared before you so many times. Not because life wants to punish you, because somewhere beneath every repetition, there is still a forgotten part of yourself waiting to be seen. Every encounter is a conversation with yourself. Imagine walking through an ancient palace. Every room is filled with mirrors. Some are polished, others are cracked. Some distort your reflection, others reveal details you have never noticed before. At first, you believe each mirror is different. Then, a quiet realization begins to emerge. Every reflection, no matter how different it appears, is still reflecting the same person. Carl Jung believed human relationships work in remarkably similar ways. Every meaningful encounter becomes a conversation between your conscious mind and the unconscious parts of yourself waiting to be recognized. Most people believe they meet other people. Jung would probably say, first, they meet themselves, not completely, not directly, but symbolically. Imagine meeting someone who seems extraordinarily confident. They walk into every room with calm certainty. They speak without seeking approval. They are comfortable being misunderstood. Some people admire them immediately. Others feel uncomfortable. Some even become irritated. Why? The confident person has not changed. The observer has. For one individual, that confidence represents an unlived possibility. For another, it awakens years of insecurity. For someone else, it reminds them of an arrogant parent. Three completely different psychological realities, created by the exact same person. This is why Jung insisted that reality is never experienced objectively. Every experience passes through the invisible filter of the psyche before it reaches consciousness. Imagine placing three different colored lenses over the same camera. The landscape remains unchanged, only the color changes. Yet, each photographer becomes convinced their picture represents reality itself. The unconscious works exactly like those lenses. It quietly colors everything before awareness has time to question it. This explains why two siblings can grow up in the same home, yet carry completely different emotional memories. One remembers warmth, the other remembers distance. One recalls freedom, the other remembers fear. The house was the same, the unconscious interpretation was not. This is one of Jung's most profound insights. We never respond only to what happens. We respond to what our inner world makes those events mean. Meaning is where emotion is born. Meaning is where identity is reinforced. Meaning is where the unconscious quietly continues writing its story. Think about how often people say, that's just the kind of person they are. Sometimes, That may be true, but Jung would gently ask another question. And what kind of person are you becoming while reacting to them? That question shifts the entire conversation. Instead of fixing attention upon someone else's behavior, it returns awareness to the only place transformation is possible, your own consciousness. Imagine spending years trying to polish every mirror in a palace. No matter how much effort you invest, another mirror still appears damaged. Eventually, someone quietly tells you, the mirrors were never the problem. You've been wearing scratched glasses all along. At first, that realization feels almost offensive because the ego naturally prefers changing the outside world. It feels easier, more immediate, more controllable. But psychological maturity begins the moment we become willing to ask, what inside me is participating in this experience? Not to blame ourselves, never to blame ourselves, but to reclaim the part of reality we actually have the power to transform. Jung understood something many people still struggle to accept. The unconscious does not seek comfort, it seeks wholeness. Sometimes wholeness requires confronting painful truths. Sometimes it requires seeing ourselves in people we dislike. Sometimes it requires admitting that the qualities we admire most intensely are qualities our own soul has been longing to develop. Both attraction and rejection can become mirrors. Both reveal something hidden. Both point toward forgotten aspects of the self. Imagine standing before a sculptor watching a block of marble slowly transformed into a masterpiece. From the outside, so it appears the sculptor is creating something new. In reality, he is removing everything that does not belong. Jung believed individuation unfolds in much the same way. You are not creating your true self. You are uncovering it. Every projection recognized removes another layer. Every unconscious reaction understood reveals another fragment. Every relationship honestly examined brings you one step closer to the person you have always been beneath the masks. Perhaps this is why the world keeps placing mirrors in your path. Not because life enjoys testing you, because somewhere beneath every encounter, your unconscious continues asking the same quiet question. Are you finally ready to see yourself? The day the mirror stops controlling you. There is a subtle difference between living unconsciously and living consciously. From the outside, the two lives can look almost identical, the same job, the same family, the same routines, the same conversations, yet internally, they could not be more different. One person moves through life reacting, the other moves through life observing. Carl Jung believed this difference marks the beginning of true psychological freedom, not because life becomes easier, but because the unconscious slowly loses its ability to control your decisions from the shadows. Imagine standing in front of an enormous mirror. Every morning, you look into it. Some days you smile, some days you criticize what you see, some days you avoid looking altogether. Now imagine something extraordinary happens. Instead of only seeing your reflection, you begin seeing yourself watching the reflection. For the first time, you are no longer completely identified with the image. You become aware of the observer. Jung believed this is one of the most important moments in psychological development. The ego reacts, the self observes. That distinction changes everything. Most people spend years believing they are their emotions. I am angry. I am anxious. I am afraid. But awareness quietly introduces a different possibility. What if I am the one witnessing those emotions? The emotion still exists, but your relationship with it has changed completely. Imagine sitting beside a river. Leaves float past on the current. One leaf carries anger, another carries fear, another carries jealousy, another carries regret. If you jump into the river every time a leaf appears, the current controls you, but if you remain seated on the shore, watching without immediately reacting, something remarkable begins to happen. You discover that every emotion eventually continues downstream. Nothing remains forever. Jung understood this long before modern psychology began speaking about mindful awareness. He knew that identification gives unconscious patterns their power. Observation slowly dissolves that power. This is why so many people believe they are trapped inside repetitive emotional cycles. In reality, they have become fused with every thought that passes through their minds. Imagine watching clouds crossing the sky. No one tries to stop them. No one becomes frightened because one cloud is darker than another. You simply observe. Thoughts were never meant to be treated differently, yet human beings often mistake passing mental events for permanent truths. A single thought appears, "I am not enough." Instead of observing it, the ego immediately builds an identity around it. Years later, entire lives have been organized around one thought that was never questioned. Jung believed consciousness begins expanding the moment we stop automatically believing everything that appears inside the mind. Not because every thought is false, but because not every thought belongs to the self. Some belong to fear, some belong to childhood, some belong to cultural conditioning, some belong to forgotten wounds. The observer patiently distinguishes between them. Imagine entering a theater. The lights dim, a film begins. For 2 hours, you become completely absorbed. You laugh, you cry, your heart races. Everything feels real. Then suddenly, the lights come back on. Nothing on the screen has changed, but your relationship with it changes instantly. You remember? It was a movie. Jung believed awakening follows a remarkably similar process. Life does not suddenly stop presenting challenges. People do not suddenly become easier. Conflict does not disappear, but something fundamental shifts. You stop believing every psychological drama your ego presents as absolute reality. Space appears, clarity appears, choice appears. That space is where freedom quietly begins. Not the freedom to control the world, the freedom to stop being unconsciously controlled by it. This is why the mirror eventually loses its power. Not because life stops reflecting your unconscious, but because you finally recognize the reflection for what it is. A message, not a sentence. An invitation, not a prison. Imagine an old map that guided you for decades. Every road, every destination, every decision, built upon directions that no longer match the landscape. Would you continue following it simply because it feels familiar, or would you trust your own eyes? Most people continue following the map. The self quietly invites you to begin seeing, because the greatest transformation does not happen when the world changes. It happens when the person looking into the mirror finally recognizes that they have been free to choose a different way of seeing all along. And perhaps that is the moment the mirror stops showing you only your past and begins revealing the person you are becoming. The person you see in the world is the person you have not yet understood. There is one illusion so convincing that most people never realize they are living inside it. The illusion that the world is introducing you to strangers. Carl Jung believed something entirely different. He believed life is constantly introducing you to yourself, not the self you show the world, not the carefully constructed persona, not the identity you learn to protect, but the forgotten parts, the abandoned parts, the wounded parts, and sometimes the magnificent parts you have never allowed yourself to become. Imagine spending your entire life walking through a gallery of portraits, thousands of faces, thousands of expressions. Every painting seems different. Then one afternoon, a guide quietly tells you something impossible. They are all self-portraits. At first, you would probably laugh. How could that be true? The faces are different. The ages are different. The stories are different. Yet the guide smiles. You are not seeing their faces. You are seeing your own unconscious responding to them. This is precisely what Jung spent decades trying to explain. The world is not simply populated by people. It is populated by mirrors, some polished, some broken, some beautiful, some painful, every one of them revealing something that already exists within you. Think about the people you admire most deeply. Not celebrities, not distant heroes, the people whose presence genuinely inspires you. Why them? Why does their courage move you? Why does their peace attract you? Why does their wisdom feel familiar? Perhaps Because admiration is also a mirror. The qualities that awaken admiration often point toward potentials your own soul has been quietly carrying for years. You recognize them, not because they belong exclusively to someone else, but because part of you has always longed to express them. The same principle applies to fear. Sometimes the people who intimidate you reveal strengths you have spent years suppressing. The people who seem impossibly authentic may simply be living in ways your unconscious secretly desires. This is why projection is never only negative. The shadow does not contain only darkness. It also contains forgotten light. Jung often referred to this as the hidden gold within the unconscious. Many people bury not only their pain, but also their brilliance. They hide creativity because they were once mocked. They hide leadership because they fear rejection. They hide love because vulnerability once brought suffering. Little by little, entire dimensions of the personality disappear beneath adaptation. The world then performs its quiet miracle. It sends someone carrying exactly what you abandoned, not to make you feel inferior, to remind you that it still exists. Imagine planting seeds throughout a vast forest, then forgetting where you planted them. Years later, you return. Trees now stand where tiny seeds once disappeared beneath the earth. The unconscious behaves in much the same way. Nothing meaningful is ever completely lost. Forgotten, yes, hidden, often, destroyed, rarely. The self patiently preserves everything essential until consciousness becomes ready to reclaim it. Perhaps this explains why certain encounters feel almost sacred. You meet someone for only a few minutes, yet something inside shifts forever. Not because they changed you, because they awakened something that had been sleeping. The mirror did not create the image, it simply revealed it. Jung believed this is one of life's greatest gifts. Every encounter offers two possibilities: remain asleep or awaken a little more, blame the reflection, or become curious about it, repeat the old story, or write a different one. The choice quietly returned, again and again, with every relationship, every disappointment, every unexpected act of kindness, every painful goodbye, every person who enters your life carrying a lesson you did not know you needed. Eventually, something remarkable begins happening. You stop asking, why did this person appear in my life? Instead, you begin asking, what part of me arrived together with them? That single question transforms every relationship, not into a problem to solve, but into a doorway leading inward. And perhaps that has always been the real purpose of every mirror. Not to tell you who other people are, but to slowly reveal who you have been becoming all along. When the world stops being your enemy, there comes a moment, quiet, almost impossible to notice, when something profound changes inside you. The world is exactly the same. The morning arrives as it always has. People continue behaving according to their own fears, like their own dreams, like their own unconscious patterns. Nothing outside has fundamentally changed, yet somehow everything feels different because the battle has moved for years, perhaps your entire life. You believed peace depended on changing the people around you, convincing them